Welcome back to Vetted VA Live. It's Tuesday at 5 o'clock Pacific here. You may be in other parts of the country and it could be considerably later. But we get together here every week and cover topics of interest, topics that keep coming up among members in the Vetted VA group on Facebook. And tonight we have an interesting one. We're going to be talking about secondary entitlement. So how to use your VA benefit when you already have a loan. So not with paying it off, refinancing out of your VA loan. You have a VA loan, getting another one. So we have a lot of myths and misconceptions around that. So we're going to go through it. This one, we're going to have some slides. Most weeks we try to keep it just to a conversation. This one here is a little math heavy, so we tried to keep it as simple as possible with a few basic slides. We're going to go through the concepts involved and then give you a few examples. As always, anyone has questions, the comments are wide open here. Jump in, let us know what questions you have, anything you want to know, and we're happy to go through it. So with that, let me introduce our guests tonight. We got Jason York out of Williamsburg, Virginia. Both of our guests tonight are VVA 5s, which is the highest ranking in the vetted VA group. He's a mortgage loan officer. So this is going to be hard for me because both of our guests are Jason. So I'm going to keep wanting to say Jason, and I don't know how in the world we're going to keep the two of you straight. So hopefully it won't be too bad. But Jason York in Williamsburg, Virginia, Go Prime Mortgage. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into the mortgage business and what got you into this group and helping veterans?
All right. I've been in the business about 16 years. I was in the car business before that. And so we're talking 2005. And my first son was on his way to be born. And it was, I mean, if you know anything about the car business, you're working night and day. So I was like, if I'm going to see him, I got to do something different. And of course, this is the time when everything was going crazy in the mortgage business. So my general manager that I worked side by side with, he was just like, he talked to a friend and was like, oh man, you can just make so much money in the mortgage business. It's so easy. I'm just like, okay, it can't be that simple. And so I didn't know anybody. So I just reached out to the guy that did my last refinance. And he said, hey, just come in and talk to us. And so we sat down, he shot it to me straight. And he's like, you may make 50,000, you may make 60. I was like, but you may do great. I'm not going to promise you the world. And so I decided, with my son being 2 months old, like, okay, hey, let me jump into a whole new career, full commission, everything. And I mean, of course, you can look back and like, that probably wasn't the best idea, but it worked out. And I've been doing it for about 16 years, and it's turned into a career.
Definitely a bold move with a child on the way to make that transition. And
Right.
you're in Virginia. Obviously, a lot of veterans in the area. Are you a veteran yourself?
No, I am not. I'm not, and it just kind of unfolded this way. I gravitated that way, and the owner of my company is former military, and so I was already a little bit into it, and I kind of came under him. I've been with him for 12 years, and so that kind of drove me to kind of dive harder into it and start doing more, and branched out from there.
Awesome. And how did you find your way over here to Vetted VA?
Chris found me. I was over in Rick Betancourt's other group, and it didn't even dawn on me to solicit people when they were asking questions. So people were asking questions, and hey, how do I do this? And I would simply answer them, thinking this is normal. This is what you're supposed to do. And Chris kind of found me and was like, hey, come and check out our group. And he's like, the way you do things, this is what we're trying to do. And so it was very eye-opening, and it was definitely welcoming to be able to come over to Vetted VA.
Cool. Well, we're glad to have you in the group. We're glad to have you here tonight. Now, our other Jason Rivera, is much closer to me here in California. You're in San Diego with Legacy Realty Network. How long have you been in the real estate business, and how did you get started?
I've been a licensed real estate agent for about 4 years. Got into the business because my wife was a broker or owner of a Keller Williams down here. What drove her and myself into the real estate business ultimately was our own kind of path. When I was a veteran or active duty, we basically wanted to buy a home when we were 18, 19, newlywed, wanted to get a house. There wasn't really any plan behind it, but it was just like, hey, we want to buy a house. Went and saw a house. Needless to say, we spoke to a lender. They said we were too young, and we're like, oh, okay. They didn't even talk about the VA loan, didn't talk about any options, didn't try to sell us on something smaller. It was just like, you guys are too young. And we walked out the door. At that point, got into stocks. We didn't really revisit buying a home for about another 4 or 5 years later. We were like 23, 24, something like that here in San Diego. And it was kind of top of the market. I think it was like 2007. Bought a home, did a VA loan, did an 80-20 loan. We were in it for 9 years. Finally, sold that, got into another home. And needless to say, kind of our own path of not using the VA loan, not knowing about the VA loan, having, commanders and chiefs and everyone above me basically at that time saying, don't buy a home, and we're like, why shouldn't you buy a home? But needless to say, it was kind of our own path that drove us into where we're at today.
It's amazing how often we hear a version of that story. Someone who had the ability to use their VA loan and just had an experience that either a bad experience or was talked out of it or sent a different direction, and later in life circled back saying, hey, there's a better way to do this, and got into helping veterans. So thank you for your service, and thank you for your service here in the group. Before we jump in, we actually do have a question here that's not on the topic for tonight, so I wanted to jump into that. Just as I heard through random SMEs, cash is king currently, and those trying to acquire four walls and a roof solely on credit are struggling. How does one, especially first-time home buyers, capture successful offers solely based on credit while competing with appraisal gaps, over offers, and cash in hand? With only so many millionaires in the country, how does one compete against investors? So the good news is, back in episode 2, we covered that thoroughly. We got a whole hour on it. So here in the comments, I'll post a link to that if you want to check out that video. Gives you everything you need to know on that topic. So again, back to tonight, what we're going through is secondary entitlement and being able to purchase a home when you already, with your VA financing, when you already have a VA loan. So kind of to set the stage for everyone, do either one of you want to explain to us just how your standard entitlement works and what a certificate of eligibility looks like? Jason Rivera, like you saying, you didn't really know what it meant that you were eligible for VA, what that looked like. We actually get a lot of people that reach out and they want to inquire about using their VA benefit. They don't even know what a certificate of eligibility looks like, where they get it, and what it tells them. And I think it's a good place for us to start the conversation tonight, because that gives us a basis for how it looks once you have used it before. Either one of you want to answer that?
I can dive in for from the lender standpoint. As you are going through your pre-approval process, when I talk to somebody and say, yeah, I want to use my VA loan, literally the first or second thing I do is pull their certificate of eligibility, because you need to verify in the very beginning that, first off, that they're eligible. They haven't lost entitlement, they haven't used entitlement, if they're exempt from the funding fee. There's a lot of things that can tell you that you want to know in the very beginning. And I don't know how many times I get an application that somebody's already talked to another lender and they're like, hey, have they pulled your certificate? And they're like, no, we haven't done that. I'm like, you're 3 weeks in. Well, how has that not been pulled? And especially for somebody that may be a reservist, or somebody that maybe had a foreclosure, or something that is not just the vanilla, hey, I've never used it, here's my certificate. Those things, you have to check those things out first, because if something's not right on there, that can come up and bite you in the butt 3 weeks into it. And so getting that done in the beginning is gonna tell you, one thing, that you're eligible, if you've ever used it, if you are exempt from the funding fee, and if you have used it, how much entitlement is currently tied up with the property. Then from there, if you're going to be selling that property or keeping it. So that kind of sets the stage of what you can do going forward, depending on what your plans are.
Let's take a look.
If you've never used it, it's going to show a maximum amount of $36,000, which it does throw off a lot of people. Like, oh my gosh, is that all I can buy? Is $36,000? That is just, for lack of better terms, the old school formula that VA originally put in their handbook and has never changed. It's 25% of $144,000.
What I threw up here is exactly what you're talking about here is basic certificate of eligibility. It's hard to see when we show the full screen. So the most important part is the info here in the top. So exactly what you were saying, 36,000, 144,000, no info. This person had never used their benefit before. So when we transition from there, why don't we take a peek at how this looks when we're talking about secondary entitlement? You can see now we start having some information in here, but tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here on one that's been used before.
Okay, this is a borrower that currently has a house in Nevada, and this is where it'll show your, I'm moving my mouse like you can see it, where the VA loan number is going to be your LIN. Then you've got your loan amount which would have been your total loan amount, and then the date you did the loan, and then the entitlement that's been charged to the current loan, which that's going to represent 25% of your loan amount. And then it shows the status, which is active on this one. It's going to show your veteran's basic entitlement is 0. That just means your basic entitlement of the $36,000 has been used on this current house. And so the total amount charged to the previous VA loans or current is the $104,250. The top part, you've got your branch of service at Army. Then where it shows funding fee, it's going to say whether you're exempt or non-exempt. So that tells us if you have to pay the funding fee into your loan. The code of the 05, that's going to show subsequent use, which subsequent use is going to be any time after the first time you've used it. So whether it's the second time or the 25th time, it's going to be subsequent use. And that will be just the different funding fee amount, which is 3.6% based on 100% financing.
So really, we didn't necessarily want to start with explaining the certificate of eligibility. A lot of you know what it is, where to get it, how to read it. But in the context of secondary entitlement, being able to see where the information comes from and how this gets calculated works. So why don't we transition to this? Jason Rivera, why don't you explain what secondary entitlement is, and maybe tell us, you're dealing with veterans. San Diego is probably on the West Coast, far and away our most veteran heavy market, active duty heavy market. What are the misconceptions that you hear from potential buyers, veteran buyers, around secondary entitlement, being able to use their VA benefit again? And then again, maybe just start by explaining to us what it actually is and how you are capable of using your VA benefit even with a VA loan outstanding.
Sure. So, I mean, we here in San Diego, especially, a lot of people PCS to San Diego at some point, especially if you're with the Marines or Navy. In any case, you come to San Diego and you're like, hey, I want to buy another home, and maybe you still have a home, and you're trying to figure out what should you do. Well, first off, some of the rumors, if you will, that are still kind of going around, which surprises me, is that you can only have one VA loan at a time. Not true. And we're essentially going to cover that in more detail here. The other thing is I can only use my VA loan once, which is also not true. In any case, your second tier entitlement or second use of the VA loan is just that. So in this example here, in Nevada, this member had a loan for $392,534 and used an entitlement of $104,250. And so let's say they're coming to San Diego. I'm not sure if I'm going ahead of this where we're at for the slide purposes, but if they were coming to San Diego and they wanted to purchase
Well, do we want to go? Do we want to? Yeah. Use this example. So it was Jason's example because we were looking at the Virginia area example, but it's very similar to San Diego. San Diego also has high balance limits. You know, a lot of the higher cost areas where veterans may be getting PCS2 do have this. So yeah, go through that. We were just looking at that COE showing what a veteran may have in remaining entitlement. So just sort of the examples we're going to use here. These are the figures from Prince William County. They can go to 970,800 on the Fannie Freddie County limits. You know, something we didn't talk about earlier in the show or just yet with the Blue Water Act. VA doesn't have limits. I mean, in terms of investors, they all do play some level of limit, but you're not encumbered by these limits on the VA loan, but it does absolutely come into play with tonight's topic. So remembering for this one, the borrower has used 104,250 of entitlement, which will not be restored. So in this situation, they're not refinancing that loan. They're not selling that property. They're not coming up with cash and paying that off. So with that, now why don't we kind of run into what those numbers look like for someone?
Sure. So they had this loan. They used their entitlement. So in this, I'm doing the same thing Jason was doing with my mouse. So
I do the same thing, and I do this every week, and I still don't know that the mouse won't show on the screen.
So under entitlement used, we see the 104,250. We know that the county loan limit is 970, and then we see the available entitlement 138,450. What we really need to know, and what this calculator, if you read the VA handbook, it gets a little confusing. They like to go from purchase price or loan amount. They use 25%, and they give us an entitlement used. And that's what this kind of calculator is doing. But the simple form is we know the county loan limit was 970. I don't remember what the purchase. I can't go back in the slides, but it was what was the original loan amount? The original loan amount for Nevada.
Where did it go?
392,534. So if we were to deduct that 392 from that 970, we're going to get that 553,800. The other way that the VA likes to show it on paper is that they use the 25%. In any case, what this calculator is showing you, which is simplifying the math because it's doing it for you, is that your max zero down is 553,800. That is the max amount that you could spend in Virginia on a home with no money down. Now, does that mean that you can't go over that amount? No. I guess that's a different example. So I'll just
but before we even go on to that, let's look at this example and go a little deeper. Now, I'd love to hear both of you comment on this. So we have the misconception, people out there that don't think they can use their VA loan if they already have a VA loan. But in this instance, if we go back, so this is saying with zero down can go all the way to 553 and had a previous loan of 392. If that loan was done 2 years ago, it's probably 370, 380 of loan outstanding. But here we are able to borrow another 553,000. So the numbers are pretty big. Does that, Jason York, when you see people and you're talking to people, does it surprise them that they're able to get another loan that large without putting money down on a VA loan?
It really does. I mean, especially, I mean, I'm in Virginia, so I'm all the way down from Virginia Beach all the way up to DC, right at the Pentagon. So everything up in the Northern Virginia area is just like California. It's the high cost area. That's the 970, 800. Down in the southern parts of Virginia, most of the county limits are the normal conforming limit of 647. So, and that can play pretty big into how much entitlement's left where you're buying. So if you, in each year, as they've increased the conforming limit, that makes this calculation a lot more beneficial for a lot more people. Because if somebody was moving, say, from California at 970 down to Southern Virginia 8 years ago, it was 417,000. They got nothing. And so having these higher limits, if you're moving from Southern Virginia to a more expensive area, it does give you more opportunity. And a lot, like you, where you're going, a lot of people come in like, well, I'm probably going to have to go conventional because I already have one. And I'll do the calculation. I'm like, well, hey, you can borrow up to 553 with zero down. And like, what? And then like, well, it may be a little bit higher. And then, okay, well, you can still do that. And you'll still come out a lot of times ahead, putting the difference down with the VA loan instead of doing conventional, and still have the benefits of the VA loan with no mortgage insurance, better rates, more flexibility in financing. And so a lot of people are definitely shocked that, oh, wow, my opportunity is still there.
And I don't know how you guys feel about this, but to me, most everything VA mortgage related is fairly common sense. There's some things that are out there, but this one is probably the easiest one to get tripped up and confused on. So in addition to having two Jasons as our guests, this is far and away in 8 episodes, the most complicated, trickiest thing to go through. So we talk about every week that you should be working with a professional who has experience with VA loans, whether that professional is your realtor, needs to have experience with VA financing and know that you can do this, and your mortgage loan officer absolutely has to know this stuff. And it's shocking to me how often people get misinformation. Like, I don't expect every loan officer in the country to know these numbers like the back of their hand, but they should at least be familiar with the concept of secondary entitlement. Now, this was probably the easy example here to run through of someone who could get into another property up to $553,000 without any money down. Why don't we go into the next example that you gave us here, where we go a little higher in purchase price? Doesn't mean that you can only buy to 553. You can go higher. You're just looking at now having to make a down payment. So why don't you walk us through that?
Well, kind of what you said, like, I mean, I do these numbers all day long, and I can tell you the formula all day long. But anytime I start working on a file and I have to do this calculation, I literally handwrite it, because you can get tripped up very easily. So it's like, let me just double check my math, and because I can breeze on through it, and that's not something you want to screw up on. So on this example, we kept the baselines the same of the 970. 104 250 U's gives you the 553 800 max at zero down. And then you're like, you know what, that's not enough for what we need. We're finding a house at 650,000. So what you then have to look at is 25% of the 650,000. And I wrote these in my notes earlier because, again, I handwrite it. 25% of the 650, which is your purchase price, is going to be $138,450. So you're going to subtract the 138. Oh, hold on. Oh, no, I'm looking wrong. Yeah, I'm wrong. The 650, the 25% is 162.5. That's why I was like, that doesn't add up. So if you were to, you need 25% guarantee, or VA needs 25% guarantee for that $650,000 house. So you need $162,500. According to this calculation, you only have $138,450 available. So VA allows you to make up the difference of that to get you a total of 25%, which is that $24,050. So now you have the full entitlement available to purchase the $650,000 house, and you're still only having to put $24,000 down.
Which is, it's a pretty amazing thing that now we're talking 650, so less 25 down, so 575 plus the other 394, and the numbers are not that. Down. Yeah, and the numbers are not that large. Even when you go take this number up to 970, say you want to go to the 950, the 900, it's still quite possibly your far and away lowest down with the very attractive interest rates that we have on,
and no mortgage
loans. And no mortgage insurance. So rather than thinking, hey, I can't do it, it may not be as awesome as the zero down on the way in, but you still have the ability to do it without much down, with excellent terms on the loan. And I think for those of you watching at home, you can see this isn't complicated math, but it is complex math where you have to get the numbers right. And again, there's just a lot of people that are not familiar with even the concept that you can do it, but then how to run the numbers. So our two guests tonight do this a lot, both in heavy veteran markets and active duty markets. Like I'm not too far north of you, Jason Rivera. Here we're 2 hours to the north, but we don't have a lot of active duty up here. It's quite a ways. So when I talk to my friends in South Carolina, in Virginia, in San Diego, you guys deal with very different stuff than what we have here. We had a good question here pop up, and hopefully you guys can walk us through this. What if a member had a short sale or a foreclosure? How does that then impact what we're looking at in terms of that certificate of eligibility, how the entitlement looks, and what are they able to do?
You want to take that one, Jason?
Well, I don't. This is probably a little bit outside of my area of expertise, but I do know that when there is a short sale or foreclosure, your entitlement is stuck, like essentially in use until that member pays it back. So it's not. It's kind of calculating like the second tier, like we just did.
Yeah, Josh, do you want to skip back to just the full certificate of eligibility?
Yep, let's get it back up there.
And Jason, you pretty much nailed it of the basic of it.
Right.
Go back to the one that has where it shows like active. Or I guess this is fine. Where it says status right here. If you have a foreclosure, deed in lieu, short sale, anything that has resulted in some sort of loss for the VA, under status, where the other one said active, this one will say compromised. So that means something has not gone right with that loan. Whether, like you said, it was foreclosed, it was deed in lieu, short sale, whatever. VA incurred some sort of monetary loss. When they do that, your entitlement that was on that loan is essentially forfeit at this point. And that's where it says entitlement charged, your amount that you've lost is sitting right there. And there's two parts of this, because if VA loses $1, your whole entire entitlement that was charged on that loan is now forfeit. It's compromised. So on the previous example, that was $104,000 of entitlement. VA lost $1. You've lost $104,000 of entitlement. So you come to me, you come to Jason, and you say, "Hey, I'd like to buy a house," and I pull up. You've got a compromise. Well, I short sold a house. Okay. Well, one thing we can often check is touch base with VA and find out how much money they actually lost on the foreclosure, deed in lieu, or short sale on your house, and see what the monetary amount is. Because they may say, "Oh yeah, we lost $1." And I mean, of course, this is an extreme example. If you pay that $1 back, which wipes that debt clean through VA, you're now going to have your entitlement restored back to full. So I've had this happen before where a borrower had, I think, about $50,000, $60,000 worth of entitlement tied up from a short sale. And we said, "Hey, well, let's just give them a phone." I can't call, but the borrower can call the RLC and find out, "Hey, how much was our loss?" And their loss was $16,000. So for them, they paid $16,000 and wiped that loss clean, got full entitlement back, and was able to purchase at that time it was a higher than the county limit with no money down. So for them, it worked out much better finding out how much that loss is instead of putting down the more money because of the entitlement that was lost.
So we had, and then again, what you just said there is really important, because I'm going through it. Some people, maybe there was a huge loss for you get someone closer to DC, someone out here in California. could be $120,000, $130,000 loss. And they're going to look and go, hey, sorry, I don't have that money sitting around. And they may never get to use their VA benefit. But when you find out what that number is, it's a pretty easy calculation to say 16 grand versus coming up with a big down payment.
It's worth a phone call.
Absolutely. We had a question in here that is something that does not come up a lot, and I don't have this hardly ever come up here in California, but someone's just pointing out, don't forget to discuss limits below 144,000 if there's an existing encumbrance. Do you know the guidelines around that, Jason? Again, like I said, it's not something that comes up often. We don't have homes under 144,000 out here. So I had never come across it until very recently.
This is one of those guidelines that most loan officers don't find out until you get hit with it, because it doesn't come up very often. But in order to use bonus entitlement, the purchase price does have to be over $144,000 for the second house. And but yeah, it's one of those that most people don't know. It's never talked about, and you find out when you find out, and it's, oh crap. So it's once you learn that and you hear it for the first time, it's ingrained in your head that, okay, hey, it's in order to use the bonus entitlement, the purchase price of the new home does have to be over 144.
And normally the VA loans are like the most borrower friendly loan there is out there. Is there a reason why they have that limitation of not allowing you to buy under 144?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, it kind of likens it back to the old archaic, still using 144 as some sort of baseline. I mean, does it have any real relevance in today's market? Not really. But I don't have a good answer on that of why that even applies.
And after the big run up of the last 10 or 12 years, most areas of the country are not going to have homes under $144,000. But flashback 2010, 2011, 2012, I'll bet there were a lot of people that got bit with that. They're like, oh, we're moving. We can get an affordable home in this part of the country. We'll use our secondary benefit. And they find out halfway through the process that they can't. So I didn't know if I did a little research on it. And I'm like,
it kind of have to be like a perfect storm to all of that align. And then, oh, man. So.
Absolutely. Now, do either one of you guys want to go into this? I think we've answered most of the questions we have here. The examples here can be pretty complex, but hopefully folks can see definitely possible to buy a second home using a VA loan without putting anything down. If you go above or go too high on the purchase price, you can do it with a reasonable down in most situations. One of the big misconceptions that I hear all the time, people say, hey, with rates higher now, we don't hear it as much, but say last year, rates are really low. You'd have someone call and say, hey, I have a VA loan. I'd like to use my VA to purchase, so I need to refinance my current home and get out of that VA loan. Do you want to talk a little bit about restoring, how you can restore your entitlement, of what the standard restoration looks like, and then also what a one-time restoration looks like?
Let me hit on that, Jason, since it's.
If you want to, I can do one-time restoration if you just want to hit on the regular one.
Okay, good, because that's the more confusing one. As far as like getting your home, your entitlement restored, a lot of that is it's kind of done behind the scenes, because you may have like, hey, we're selling this house on May 30th, and we're going to buy the new house on May 31st. So obviously you need the entitlement from your old house to be able to purchase the new house. The process is basically, we're going to, once the other house sells, we're going to get a copy of the closing disclosure, upload that directly to VA, and VA says, okay, hey, they've sold this house that was attached to this VA loan. They restore your entitlement back to zero. And so which then kind of flips over to the next house. You have full entitlement and you go to purchase the new one. Sometimes if there is no time, or both of them are being done on the 31st, obviously you don't have enough time to do that. But it's one of these things that's essentially guaranteed that, okay, it just has to go through the proper steps to do this. So, and this can be very lender dependent. We'll do that same process and knowing, hey, this one's closed. Make sure I have this stuff first before you can close on the new one, knowing that, hey, I can take all of that while you're signing that. I'm going to be operating this to get it done. And you may close both of them on, say, a Friday, but I may not actually get your full restoration until Monday. So again, this can be very lender dependent on some may say, hey, we're not going to do it until it's all done and we have it in hand. Other ones may say, hey, we do this enough where we know we have the documentation we need, it's going to be done. And then by the time everything's getting recorded and submitted on Monday, we have it all in hand.
Perfect.
And Jason can have fun with the restoration.
So one-time restoration, and this is, it's talked about very commonly because you get members PCSing, especially if they've purchased in maybe like Virginia area where Jason's at, and then they're coming to San Diego and they have, an expensive home coming to San Diego after 5 years or whatever the tour length is, and they want to buy another home here. And in any case, one of the things I always preference that is first off, before you even look at the one-time restoration, make sure you speak to your mortgage professional like Jason and have a conversation as far as what entitlement you have left over and what other options there may be, because your one-time restoration that we're going to go into kind of locks you into this predicament, and we're going to go into that now. So when you do a one-time restoration, one of the things that you're going to need is that you need to have some equity or appreciation or both in your home, in the sense that ideally you're looking for a 20% difference, so that you're going to refinance your existing home that you're currently living in or leaving into a conventional loan. The reason you're looking for like that 20% is to avoid the PMI that would be there if you didn't have that. Once you refinance that home out of the VA, your entitlement is still tied up. If you were to pull your COE, it would still show that your entitlement's tied up. So you would, well, there's a couple different ways, but you could call the RLC in either case, or work with your lender, and you're going to do a one-time restoration. What the VA does is they say, okay, we're going to restore your benefits of your VA loan back to full entitlement. And so in that case, now what we had talked about earlier, that bonus entitlement, second tier entitlement, however you want to word it, it is gone. You have essentially a brand new VA loan that you can now buy a $2 million home in San Diego with, right? No limits, as long as you financially qualify. So you buy that home, and now you own the home here in San Diego, and you still own the home in Virginia. Now, that might be okay if, let's say, you're retiring here, you plan on keeping both these homes for forever. The area that people start to run into some issues with, and this is where the one-time restoration gets people, is that let's say you PCS to Hawaii. And you're like, well, I've lived in my house in San Diego now long enough. I want to do a one-time restoration again. Well, it's only one time, so that's not an option now. The other thing is you're like, well, what about second tier entitlement? Well, that goes away as well. Then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to sell the house in San Diego and free up my entitlement and buy another home. Well, that's not an option either. Essentially, when you do that one-time restoration and you decide that you want to buy a third home with your VA loan, and you want to use your VA loan, the only option is to sell both homes. So you would have to sell both the San Diego home and the Virginia home to once again have your full entitlement. You can't just sell the Virginia home. You can't just sell the San Diego home. Both homes have to be sold to regain that.
And Jason, what's the purpose of that? Why did VA, we don't know why they limit the purchase price to $144,000, but this one, there's actually a good and valid reason. Why does the VA place that limitation?
I honestly don't know.
It's really just to prevent people from using the VA program to just acquire property
Yeah.
after property and have this big rental portfolio they've built up over time with the VA helping them put zero down. So it makes sense from a wider perspective. But again, this one, the way you just explained it, I don't know that there's 500 people in the country that could explain the way that one-time restoration works, and it's very important if you find yourself in that situation that you want to do it, because there's some pretty serious ramifications and things that you need to know as you're going through it. So we've covered a lot of ground. I think we've covered most of the questions. What I would love to do, why don't we start with you, Jason Rivera? What would you like veterans to know? Anyone that's out there watching, what things should they know about that secondary entitlement, or just the buying process as they're getting PCS'd around the country and having to look at financing, buying? What in big broad strokes of this topic is critical that a veteran needs to know as they're getting moved around?
My biggest important thing that comes to mind is actually what I was just talking about, which is using that one-time restoration versus entitlement. I feel like a lot of vets think, hey, I need to do the one-time restoration, which they refinance the house, which costs money. They get it out of the conventional loan, or they get it into the conventional loan, out of the VA loan, do the one-time restoration. They go through all this process when a lot of vets have enough entitlement left over, kind of like what Jason York was saying earlier. They don't realize it, that they could have bought that second home with maybe a little bit of money down or maybe no money down, and had the two VA loans and not tied themselves up into that kind of the caveat of that one-time restoration, where if you use that second bonus entitlement, in the case, let's say you did go from Groton, Connecticut to San Diego, and then you wanted to move to Hawaii, or you got PCS to Hawaii, you could sell either one of those homes, and whatever that entitlement was used would be restored. If you're doing, the first part of this conversation, that bonus entitlement, where on the one-time restoration, that's a no-go. And I see just so many vets get kind of stuck on that one-time restoration without looking at the other option, which in a lot of cases, if you're in the financial aspect that can do it, I think it's a better option than to tie up that VA loan forever, or until you sell those homes.
It's one of those things, like it's a great option to have, but you do need to consider and review and look at all your options before you go that route, because that's the one that kind of boxes you in the most and takes away the most of your other options, or more of your other options than any other route would do. Jason York, how about yourself? Do you have any more thoughts on this topic that you think it's important that watchers or viewers here should know?
Like you said, with a broad stroke, the first thing, just knowing that it's available. Of just like, oh, I can use it more than one time. I can use it for more than one home at a time, and it's something that can consistently be renewed depending on, obviously, your life and in your pathway. But yeah, exactly like what Jason said, of being able to work with a realtor that first off can say that, of, hey, have you checked this out first? But then also having a lender that is going to take all of everything that you're telling them and look and see what's going to be the best option for you. Okay, we can get the entitlement back if you do a one-time restoration, but here's what you're stuck with. Okay, well, if we go with the bonus entitlement, we can do this, and here's your down payment. And somebody that's going to present you with both options, not just the good, but the bad. Like, I mean, even with the one-time restoration, other than your entitlement's tied up, like Jason said, you have costs to refinance. So all of those things are all built in there, not somebody that just says, oh, you have a VA loan, let's do a one-time restoration, and that person's going to get a refinance deal and then get a new purchase deal. So they're not looking out at the whole entire picture of what's going to benefit that veteran more. And some of it, it depends on their flow and where they are in life. If they have 18 years in active duty and they say, I got 2 years left and I'm done. Okay, that person's going to have a different plan than somebody that's an E4 that has 6 years in and says, hey man, I got 14 more years. And so they're going to have a different trajectory than somebody else that's has a couple years left and a different plan, and those things are going to benefit them differently.
So really, at the end of the day, I think the benefit of this show every week is, first of all, getting the questions answered. We're going over some big topics and covering them in detail that it's not always easy to do in a 3 or a 5 or a 7 minute video, or even in answering someone's question in the forum when we're out there moderating. The big thing that I hope everyone takes away and sees is that the VA loan, it's a very unique tool, but it becomes much more complex, many more moving parts than most types of loans, and they're not as common for professionals on either side to work with. So again, you guys are in heavily VA markets, selling homes, financing homes a lot with VA financing, and know this stuff. So I hope anyone watching can see how critical and important it is to have experts on your side that can walk you through this. Their job's not to tell you what the right decision is, but it's absolutely to lay out what all your options are. And I think both of you guys have done a great job tonight of on this topic, showing us all of the options that a veteran would have. So it looks like we've worked our way through all the questions. I think we've covered the topic. I want to thank you guys for showing up and apologize that you guys drew the short straw on the math heavy, sort of difficult to present question. So you guys did a great job with it. Hopefully anyone that watched it walked away with a better understanding of what all of their options. So again, thanks for joining us tonight. If there's nothing else you guys have for us, I'll let you go and get on with your evening.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
Thanks. You too.